Hi, Marty Duda here with a very special 13th Floor Music Talk interview. I just had the pleasure of talking with Jimmie Dale Gilmore about the brand new Flatlanders album, which is called Treasure of Love. It's been 50 years since Jimmie, Butch, Handcock, and Joe Ely have been making music together, and according to Jimmie, they owe it all to Townes Van Zandt. Watch and listen and find out why.
Well, bid the years goodbye, you cannot still them. Cannot turn the circles of the sun. You cannot count the miles until you feel it. And you cannot hold a lover that is gone.
So thanks a lot for doing this. Congratulations on this new Flatlanders record, Treasure of Love.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, let's face it, 50 years after you guys got together, you're still all here and doing it. It's amazing.
Miraculous, kind of, I think.
I mean, do you think back to who you were in like 71, 72 and kind of imagine that this could be even possible at this point? How, music wise, I mean, you're kind of doing a similar thing, but you must be totally different people now. How do you manage? How do you
know about it?
Yeah. How do you guys work?
Although it's been a long time, and but one of the features of our relationship that Joe and Butch and I all, it seems that we still have the same connection with each other now that we had when we were teenagers.
Right. So, that's amazing. That's pretty cool. Yeah. and what was that connection that brought you guys together? I mean, obviously it must have been music, but
music was the main. Although, Butch and I were friends before either one of us learned to play any music.
Okay.
And we were friends in school, and the type of thing where we lived in different neighborhoods, so we knew each other at school, but not outside of school.
Gotcha.
We didn't hang around until we got older and had cars and things. So we were friends already, and we both became musicians without the other one knowing that had happened. We both were already when I found out Butch was playing the banjo early on.
All right.
And when I found out that he was playing, I was already learning to play the guitar by that time. So it was and then Joe's a little bit younger than Butch and I, a couple of years. So I got to know him as a performing musician, and he and I played some of the same little clubs, and we were mutual fans.
Right.
And that's how we became acquaintances. We went to each other's shows. And then one day, you've probably heard this story, but one day, Joe picked up a hitchhiker outside of Lubbock who was on his way to Houston from San Francisco. And he had this guy, he said he was this tall, lanky fellow. He had a backpack, and he didn't have any clothes in it. He only had a bunch of LPs, which was his new record. And it was Townes Van Zandt,
right?
Who we never had heard of before.
Man.
And Joe called me up and said, we knew each other, but we hadn't hung around each other any at that point. And he said, "Hey, Jimmie, I've got this record I'd really like for you to hear. It's really interesting. It's really great." So we got together to listen to the record and just knocked out by it. And then that's when Joe and I started hanging out together all the time.
Yeah.
And then later on was the same thing when we showed it to Butch. He was knocked out by it too, and that was a while later.
Yeah.
But several years later, in fact, because Butch, we'd all gone by that time. Separate. Butch was living in San Francisco. I'd already been to Austin and San Francisco and Phoenix and roaming around a lot. Yep. And Joe had been in Europe.
Oh.
And in early 71,
Yep.
It so happened that we all returned to Austin at the same time. And at that point, Butch had written a bunch of really great songs. And I said, I coaxed Joe into going over to see this friend of mine. But I think maybe they had met before, but they didn't really know each other.
Gotcha.
We sat down and at a certain point, Butch is playing several of his songs. And at a certain point, Joe looked over at me and went, "Oh, I see." He didn't say that, but it was the look in his eye, and we, ever after that night, the three of us, we started playing together just about every day.
Right.
And,
Man.
and
now, I love it. 50 years later, you're still together or together again, and you're doing a Townes Van Zandt song on the album, Snowing on.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So everything's changed and everything's the same.
That's right. That's right. In fact, this record is really, in a way, a kind of a what would you call it, a snapshot in a way of, because these songs on Treasure of Love were all, except for the new songs that Joe wrote one and Butch wrote three of them.
Yeah.
They all the rest of them were songs that we used to do together back in those days before we wrote anything together.
Very cool. Very cool.
That was kind of the.
Yeah, I think it's a great little trip through, and I'm investigating each of the songs and finding out what the original version was and blah, blah, blah. It's
great.
Fun. Yeah. And Treasure of Love itself is an old George Jones tune. And I don't know if you're familiar with this podcast called Cocaine and Rhinestones.
No, I don't think so.
It's an amazing podcast. And this guy, David Allan Coe's son, I think, hosts it. And
somebody has told me about that.
And he's gone deep into George Jones. The whole second year is, and each episode is like 2 hours long. So like I've been immersed in George Jones, everything about him. And then you guys come up with the song Treasure of Love. It's great. It was co-written with the Big Bopper, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, strangely.
I got a pocket full of pennies, but a heart full of gold. Though my troubles are many, I have treasures untold. And the shack that I live in is a palace to me. For the treasure of love you gave to me.
That was a surprise to me. I knew it was a George Jones song. I learned it, when I was very young.
Yeah.
But I did not know the Big Bopper was. But that makes sense because George Jones was a pop star in that period, or a rock star, whatever you call it.
And do you have any George Jones stories you can share?
Well, I 1 year in the period in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was touring a lot, when I was on Elektra Records, and it was really, there was one little section where I played 2 nights opening for George Jones in a couple of places in Indiana, I believe, it was so hilarious. I mean, it was a huge crowd, and it was in the days of the No Show Jones,
right?
So everybody.
There's a song right there.
I've even wondered if that was all just a fake, because it brought everybody out because they wanted to see if he showed up.
Yep.
And he. And of course, I met him and talked a little bit backstage, but very, very, superficially. And and I told him how much I loved his music and what an influence he had been, and et cetera. And then in the show, this always stuck in my memory. In both shows, somewhere late into the show, to his show. So we're there being fans after after doing the first set.
Sure. Yeah.
And, George says to the audience, he says, wow, if you keep on like that, everybody's cheering after every song.
Yeah.
And he said, if you keep on like this, we're liable to be here till 4:00 in the morning. Yay! It's crazy. And then both nights, at the end of his set, the last song, the band is just playing and playing, and George Jones gets on the bus, and the bus leaves before the band is finished playing.
Oh man.
Both nights. It was like, yeah, it's like, wow. It's like, that was kind of like a lesson in show business.
Yeah, I'm sure you could learn a lot from George, what not to do and what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. That's great. So the album itself, the 15 songs, that did three of you talk much about how this was going to come to be, or it feels to me like it's just something that you guys got together and it's like, let's play our favorite songs, and I got a couple.
Well, it was we did them randomly in a couple of periods when we were recording other albums.
Ah, okay.
So we were all set up. It was Joe's studio. Yep. and Joe's an engineer too, and it was there'd be downtime. So there we were with a really great band, a really good studio, and just the setup, we didn't have to worry about being on the clock because it was Joe's place, and so we just now and then in one of those downtimes that, one of us might say, hey, remember when we used to do such and such, Leon Russell, when we,
right.
We used to listen to Paul Siebel all the time. And
yeah,
let's record that. It's sort of like, it was a kind of a lark,
right.
But we ended up with a quite a little catalog of old things that were just old favorites.
Right.
Well, then when the pandemic came and Joe was like, stuck at home, and Joe can't sit still. He has to do something. And we had already discussed we had decided a little bit before the pandemic, when we didn't know what was on the horizon. We had decided that it was time for us to try to get back together and do another collaboration with each other. It'd been so long, been 10 years by that point. But then when we couldn't get back together, Joe called Butch and I, and he said, we've got this bunch of old recordings. What do you think about So he put together albums were, probably 10 of them, I guess, or so, 10 or 12 of them. And Butch and I listened to them, and it was kind of like they were unfinished, but they had really good rhythm tracks.
Right.
And the vocals were finished.
Yeah.
The vocals were there. That's why. So then Joe calls Lloyd and has him listen to him, and Lloyd goes, yeah, this is
cool. And Lloyd is Lloyd Maines, for those who
Lloyd Maines, yeah. So Lloyd Maines he's been a part of our gang, the whole time. And the Maines brothers were fans of the Flatlanders before we ever did any recording.
Man,
all the way back.
All the way back.
Yeah, and Lloyd took this, and then the next time I heard that it was 95% finished.
Yeah.
And it was just great, just
fantastic.
Beautiful. Everything that Lloyd had done to it had just like, wow, it went from, I've said that they were diamonds in the rough,
right?
And with the emphasis on rough. and
polished up.
They weren't rough anymore. They were beautiful.
Gotcha. How did you guys decide who was going to sing what songs?
Well, it was more or less random. It was pretty much the way we did them back in those early days.
Right.
And on the first record, I did all the singing.
Right.
I was the one that signed the recording deal and all that, and that was the
Yeah.
but we didn't. It wasn't that I was the only one that did the singing back then. We all three, when we did shows, it was equally shared, and so we had a pretty huge repertoire because it was all three of us, piling together our backlogs of everything.
Yeah.
So it's more or less self-selected.
Cool. Now, you mentioned Leon Russell. You do a song called "She Smiles Like a River," which isn't one that everyone knows, and that's you singing it, correct?
Well, she smiled just like a river flowing softly to the sea. When she floats away my problems, helps to take a little weight off me.
Yes.
Yeah. So why did you choose that one of Leon's?
Well, there's several of his I did, but that was one that we did back in those days.
Right.
That was kind of the point. We knew it, in other words. We already knew these songs. And so it was real easy to just go, like I said, because we're just throwing things down in the studio that we had free reign in.
Right.
So and so it was like, old songs that we used to do that we would like to have a recording of. We weren't even thinking of it as
a record.
When we recorded them. We weren't planning for that to be a record.
Yep. So the record was released on July 9th. The reaction must have been amazing, right? I mean, are you back together, and are you able to play out together these days?
No, we live far apart.
Right.
Butch lives out in Terlingua, which is 400 miles from here.
Right.
Joe and I live about 40 miles apart, and Joe has been really extremely extra careful during COVID.
Sure.
Really. Well, yep. we all have, but Joe, even
none of us are getting any younger, and
exactly. Exactly. And Butch and I have spent a lot of time together because Janet and I, my wife and I, have a place in Terlingua that we've been trying to spend as much time in as we can.
Right.
So Butch and Adrian, his wife, stay with us when they're in this area, and we stay. Well, now that we have a place, we stay in our place, but we hang out with them all the time. So Butch and I are together quite a bit.
Right.
But we don't see Joe as much, and it's always been that way. All through these years that we're distant, but we're still close.
Gotcha.
It's kind of hard to explain. We've all remained best friends through the whole deal of having different record companies in different careers.
Yeah.
So, and it's, and we have to, the thing, I said we had made a decision that it was time to do it again. That decision means when it's happened over the years that we now know from experience, that means, okay, we've got to figure out where, when, how we're going to afford to take off enough time.
Yep.
To have the downtime to and we all got to be in the same place, and so it's a logistical puzzle.
Yeah.
And
so
right
in the
now,
meantime, are you thinking about what you're going to do on your own next? Have you got plans?
Well, right now we don't know yet if we're going to tour with this record. I know we're going to do some, at least one-offs. We probably at least locally. I don't know, and we want to, but we're still very careful and very we don't trust this COVID thing,
No, I don't think you can. No,
not over. It
doesn't feel like it. No,
we're all vaccinated and everything, but
And are you writing songs all the time, or what?
Well, of course, Butch is
right.
Butch, right?
Yeah, because he's got 3 on the album.
And Joe, I've always been slower than either one of them, and always been the slowest. So I've got I've got lots and lots of stuff in the work, like half and three quarters and
Right.
in 1/10 finished.
Very cool. Well, sounds like
So yeah. So, but during the lockdown, this, that's definitely been happening. I've been relearning to. I'm looking at you on my brand new computer. I haven't had a
well, you got a great camera on it. It looks really good.
Yeah, I haven't had a desktop computer in several years. I just have a laptop.
Right.
Good MacBook, but I got a new iMac because I'm relearning to use Logic.
Oh, great. Well,
I learned a long time ago, but then it evolved and I got away from it long enough that I forgot. Anyway, so that's been a big part of what I've been doing.
Very cool. It feels like everybody's reemerging and kind of stretching out and going, okay, let's do this again. So
yeah, Butch and I have done one gig. We played one gig in Houston last month. So, and it was really fun. It was really great to be out again. But it's still not happening. It's still not geared.
Well, like I say, be careful. But thank you for doing this record. At least we got that.
It was really easy.
Yeah, I love it.
Thank Joe and Sharon Ely and Lloyd Maines.
Yeah.
And the musicians on it, Pat Mansky and Jimmy Pettit and Rob Gerso, who had put all the lead stuff that was there already before Lloyd went to work on it.
Right. Very cool. Well, thank you for spending the time to talk to me. I love hearing about all the stories. It's fantastic. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks, Marty.
Have a great day.
This is fun.
Yeah. Bye-bye.